What have been your experiences? Have you had awakening or enlightenment experiences, little ones, or synchronicities? And then what is practice from your perspective? If like traditional Vipassana, Theravada meditation didn't really serve, like how do you see it now?
Well, it did serve me up until a point. I mean, yeah, I think what's fascinating is my very first retreat, a weekend retreat with this guy named Dhiravamsa. He was a little Thai monk. At one point, he got set in a jhana state. The sit went on 2 hours. He forgot to ring the bell, and it was my first retreat. And I was like, 2 hours. But I walked down to the park, and all of a sudden, everything was just completely silent. And I was like seeing everything from this wordless, silent space, almost like an altered state. Like if you were on acid or something, it was just like, wow, nothing's happening. And yet I was the eye watching everything. And that was just an altered state. But I think sometimes on people's very first retreat, you can have a foretaste of what is sort of going to happen. And then of course, then there's the wanting to get that back and all the struggles. But the Vipassana was originally good with the noting and the strictness. And I was super into being like the world's best retreatant and following the form to a T. And it really helped. And I went on a lot of 3-month retreats. And my second 3-month retreat, my first 3-month retreat was just about working with depression. But once I kind of got through the bulk of a lot of difficult emotional material, my second 3-month retreat, kind of early on, I was just sitting and there was a sound of the bird, which I guess is kind of a classic thing that can happen. But the sound of the bird and the hearing of it and the me, it was all just one thing. And it was just like, boom, it just blew me away that there was no separate self in it. And then like probably 24 hours later, something just happened where there was a severing of a connection to self. It was just like something just unplugged. And I just saw clearly there was no self. And then the thoughts and the personality still came back in. But I knew without a doubt, it was very clear that there was no me. And it was very freeing, a lot just got lifted. There was a lot of joy and relaxation. And then the second experience I had, I was in Australia and I was working with an Aboriginal elder. And we were doing a very traditional ceremony with a fire and singing. And it was late at night and we were walking clockwise. And there were 4 different groups. It was very ritualistic Aboriginal ceremony. And there were 4 groups and each group was singing one piece of the song. But each piece then almost like in harmony made the song. But at one point, the piece we were singing, I was singing with my group. I all of a sudden saw that in my one piece, the whole song was there. And it's hard to describe, but I saw nothing was separate and the whole totality was in that one piece. And it was just like my whole world just broke open and I cried for like 2 days. I don't know why I cried. It was just, I couldn't stop crying. It was just like, oh my God, it's all one thing. And it was very, very deep and poignant. And then, you get these big openings and then your personality and yourself and your conditioning comes back in and, it's kind of how to integrate it. So, and then just, those things developing, those insights develop, right? So they're living insights, when you have a seeing into no self or seeing into the unity, which was the second one, they continue to develop until, I see more and more that the thinking is just going more and more, like the way of self-referencing and that whole, you wouldn't know it by how much I'm talking, but this
I've asked you, in all fairness, to you be the one who does most of the talking.
the self-referencing is being erased, and more I just feel like everything's just being kind of erased in a good way. So who knows what's next?
So inside yourself, you feel like there's just some process at work that's erasing identification with the self and all the selfing and me.
Yeah, and what I've been working on a lot with my teachers is the narration. And it was interesting listening to Aja's third awakening experience that he talks about with Tammy Simon on that interview. Is he said what happens is your narrative and your inner world just completely stops. And that certainly hasn't happened yet for me. But it was cool to hear it. When I heard it, my heart just like went, like my whole body lit up. And I was like, wow, imagine when the narrative and the inner world is just gone. He described it like looking into an empty room. Like there's no more you that's talking to yourself. And so that's kind of where my edge is right now, just watching that narrative and letting it. My teacher just says, undo it, like turn off the radio. He's given me a lot of different practices that we're working with to wean from the narrative.
So go ahead.
Yeah, and Aj also said Ajasanti said that there's no internal process. He said there's no process anymore. And I was like, whoa, what would that be like to have no process? But it does get simpler, as you know, Todd. You've probably seen it gets simpler and simpler and simpler